So, hi everyone, my name is Shivam Bohra. I'm a third year computer science engineering student from Dehradun. I love solving problems and I also love to teach. Welcome to our channel, Learn Competitive Programming with CodeChef. So, if you are interested in competitive programming and want to learn and master data structures and algorithms, then this is a one stop destination for you. Here we post weekly problem explanations, conceptual videos on various programming paradigms, and also conduct live problem solving sessions. So before we actually get started, here's a reminder for you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already yet.
So welcome to this course in which we are going to solve some extremely basic problems for absolute beginners. Now the prerequisite for this particular course is the fundamentals of programming and some basic knowledge of C++. So if you want to learn that, then we do have a separate course on it. The link is given in the description. So let's get started. So now we are on to this problem called is both or not. So just like the other problems, the link for this particular question is in the description. So first try it on your own, then you may come back and see the solution. So the problem statement says that you are given a number n. If n is divisible by 5 or 11, but not both, then print 1 without quotes. If n is divisible by both 5 and 11, then print both without quotes. And if n is not divisible by 5 or 11, then print none, right? So this is a very simple question. The input is a single integer or a single number n, and the output is simply 1, both, or none, right? Depending upon whether it is divisible by 5 and 11 or not, right? This n could be as big as 10 to the power 3, so we can use a simple integer or a simple int for this, or for storing this n, right? So if the input is 50, then 50 is divisible by 5 but not 11, so we will print 1, right? 110 is divisible by both 5 and 11, so we will write both. 16 is neither divisible by 5 nor 11, hence we will write none, right? So let's see the logic for this. So firstly I'll input n, then I'll initialize a variable c to 0, then I'll check is n divisible by 5 or not. So if n is divisible by 5, then I will simply increment the value of c, right? I will simply increment the value of c. If c was earlier 0, then now it would become 1. This 1 means that this n is divisible by one number, right? Or one of 5 or 11. After this, I'll simply check is n divisible by 11 or not. So again, if n is divisible by 11, I'll again increment the value of c, right? So again, the value of c would be incremented. So if n is divisible by both 5, n is divisible by both 5 and 11, so once c would be incremented over here, and once c would be incremented over here, right? So the value of c would first become 1 over here, and then it would become 2, right? So 2 over here, or the value 2 for c over here, means that it is divisible by both 5 and 11, right? So let's see some cases for this. So let's say n is 10, right? So firstly, I'll initialize c to 0, then I'll check is n divisible by 5. Is n divisible by 5? So 10 is divisible by 5, hence the value of c would be incremented over here. So the value of c would now become 1. Then I'll check whether n is divisible by 11 or not. So over here, 10 is not divisible by 11, hence we will simply go to the no part, and over here I will say I would not increment the value of c. So the value of c would remain 1. This 1 means that it is divisible by one of either 5 or 11, right? 1 over here means that it is divisible by either 1 of 5 or 11. Similarly, if my n is, let's say, 22, right? So over here, first I would check whether 22 is divisible by 5 or not. So 22 is not divisible by 5, so we'll simply go to the no part, and then I'll check whether n is divisible by 11 or not. So is 22 divisible by 11? The answer is yes. So we will increment the value of c. So again, c would be incremented from 0 to 1. So again, the value of c is 1 over here, right? Which means that 22 is divisible by 1 of either 11 or 5, right? So let me first erase it. So let's take another example, the last example. Let's say n is 55, right? So for this particular case, if n is 55, so firstly I'll check whether n is divisible by 5 or not. So is 55 divisible by 5? The answer is yes. So the value of c would be changed from 0 to 1. Then I'll simply check whether if n is divisible by 11 or not. So is 55 divisible by 11? The answer is yes. So again, the value of c would be incremented. So now the value of c would become 2 from 1, right? So the value of c would now become 2 from 1. So at the end of, or at this point, this particular point, the value of c has now become 2, which means that it is divisible by both 5 and 11, right? And over here, let me raise it again. And over here, let me zoom it. Over here, we will simply check if c is equals to 2, which means that it is divisible by both. Then we will simply print both. Otherwise, we will again check if c equals to 1. So if c is 1, then we will print 1. And if it is not divisible, or if c is not neither 2 nor 1, then we'll simply print none, right? And then we will simply stop. So let's write the code for this. So firstly, I'll create a variable n to store the value of n. Then I'll create another variable c and I'll initialize it to 0. Then I'll check whether my number is divisible by 5 or not. So if n is divisible by 5, then I simply have to increment the value of c, right? And after this, I have to check whether n is divisible by 11 or not. C equals to c plus 1. So now it's really important to not to write else over here, right? Many beginners would make this mistake of writing else over here. Now what would happen if you write else is that firstly it would check whether n is divisible by 5 or not. So if this condition is true, then it won't even check this condition, or it won't even execute this part. If this condition is true, then it won't even execute this part, right? So it's really important to not to write else over here. Otherwise, we'll get a wrong answer. So after checking these two conditions, now the value of c would either be 0, or it would be 1, or it would be 2, right? So after this, we simply have to check whether c is 2. So if c is 2, then we will simply print both. So simply c out, and in inverted commas, write both. So if c is 2, then we have to check if c is 1. If c is not 2, then we have to check if c is 1. So we'll simply have to write c out 1. And if c is not 1, then it is definitely going to be 0. But here, the interesting thing is that, tell me if c is 2, then do I need to check whether c is 1 or not? I mean, if this condition is true, if c is 2, if this condition is true, then do I need to check whether it is 1 or not? The answer is no. So here in this particular case, we can use else, right? Because if c is 2, then we need not to check the rest of the conditions. Similarly, if c is 1, then we need not to check the rest of the conditions. So again, we simply have to write else over here, right? And the last condition would be if C is equals to 0 or not, right? So if C is equals to 0, then we simply have to print or simply have to write NONE, none, right? So one thing over here is that we can simply skip the last condition, right? Because it's easy to understand that if C is not 2, if it is not 1, then it is definitely going to be 0. So we can simply skip the last condition in if else if ladder, right? So for this particular case, so after this, let's just run the code. Let's see for 55, will we get the correct answer or not? 55 is divisible by both 5 and 11. So I should get both over here. So let's just submit the code. And see whether we'll get the correct answer or not. Meanwhile, I have another logic to solve this particular problem. Now this is the flow chart for that particular logic. Simply try to read this flowchart and write the code for this flowchart on your own, right? And see whether you get the correct answer or not. So here we can see that we got the correct answer.